Bro, this team is finding ways every single game.
49ers general manager John Lynch was at the podium at the 2025 NFL Scouting Combine.
Jalen Brunson comes through with 12 of the Knicks' last 14 points.
The Locked On Podcast Network presents The Big 6 in 60. The 6 biggest national sports stories from the local experts of the Locked On Podcast Network. Get the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 60 minutes. The Big 6 in 60 starts now with the biggest story in sports.
Matt Stafford, the biggest name that's being talked about so far here at the Scouting Combine in Indianapolis. Well, that story, along with the Raiders, has had a new turn and a new twist to it.
You are Locked On Raiders, your daily Las Vegas Raiders podcast.
Decision time for the Raiders, veteran quarterback, rookie quarterback. And the reason I say it's decision time, because I feel like if something's going to happen with this Matt Stafford being traded anywhere, it's probably going to happen sooner rather than later. I don't think this is going to be something that's going to drag out very long. From the conversations I've had here at the Scouting Combine, Jimmy Sexton, who is the agent for both Matt Stafford and Sam Darnold, likes to move quickly, likes to get things done. And so talking to a couple different people, think that something's going to happen in the next couple of weeks. This is the big domino that's going to drop. Matt Stafford, whether he goes to the Giants, the Browns, the Raiders, the Titans, whoever needs a quarterback, the Steelers, wherever he ends up going, this is going to be the domino that's going to shape free agency as far as Sam Darnold's concerned, and obviously the draft as well. What do teams like the G-Men, the Browns, the Raiders, what do they do for their quarterback situation? So here's one hand. Matt Stafford, if you're the Raiders, 2, maybe 3 years tops, right? $100 million guaranteed is basically what you're probably looking at. You try to win as many possible games you can with him right now, and that tells your team and your fan base you have a plan to get back to winning. At least that's the perception, right? Matter of fact, Benjamin Albright, KOA in Denver, NFL Insider, he was on my radio show on Wednesday, and I asked him straight up, what does bringing Matt Stafford into the Raiders organization do for them right away?
You bring Matt Stafford and you're providing credibility. You're telling Max Crosby, hey, look, we're trying to do something here. You're telling, Nate Hobbs, who I think is probably your second best defender, to be honest. We're trying to do something here. And you're telling free agents out there, hey, we're trying to do something here. You know, we're not. You don't come here to cash in one last time before you retire. We're trying to build something here. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's part of it. I think establishing a credibility is a part of it. It is, anytime you're trying to go out there and you're trying to turn something over from a loser to a winner, there's that crawl, walk, run, or lose big, lose small, win big. And I get you don't want a 2-year ramp up. Realistically, that's what you're looking at to get there. But you don't want to say that because what are we going to do in the 2 years in the interim? What are these guys going to put their bodies on the line, going through 60 car crashes like a day going to do? So you want to establish that, hey, we're credible. We're actually trying to win, even if we're not considered a favorite for the Super Bowl. And oh, by the way, we're the toughest division in football. You got the Kansas City Chiefs in here. You got the Chargers, who all of a sudden have credibility with Harbaugh. You got the Broncos, who just made the playoffs, and now you bring in Pete Carroll. This is a tough division.
Okay, so that's what he had to say about what it does, right? It brings them credibility. It gives them, and it sends a message to the team that they're serious about winning. Something that Pete Carroll's told us, right? And you heard it on the show here yesterday, that he doesn't want a 2-year, 3-year window to try to ramp this team up. He wants to win right now. Matt Stafford can do that. He can help provide that. Say he stays healthy. Maybe you do go and draft a Ashton Genty at number 6, and all of a sudden you have, a really good quarterback. You have a really good running back, and now you're starting to put the pieces together. My problem with that is, sure, that's cool for 2 years, right? Maybe 2 years, 3 years, maybe max. So what's next? What are you doing then? Are you drafting a quarterback later in the draft this year? Are you saying, oh, that's okay, we can wait till next year and get a guy? We can wait 2 years. We can kick the can down the road. To me, that's a dangerous slope. And this is what I tried to explain to Vinny, and I don't think that he understood it when he helped co-host my radio show. It's like, look, man, the Raiders had a rotating door at the quarterback position for the longest time. I rattled off all the quarterbacks between Rich Gannon and Derek Carr. Not saying Derek Carr is a Hall of Famer. Not saying he's a Super Bowl champ or ever going to take a team to Super Bowl, but he stabilized that position. At least you knew what you were going to get from the quarterback position with the Raiders. And the big mistake that Dave Ziegler and company made when they sat Derek Carr down and eventually moved on from him, in my opinion, was not having the plan, not knowing what they were going to do with the quarterback position, not having something that was set in stone. They had an idea that they thought was going to work, and it didn't, right? And so now it's been a rotating door ever since Carr left, right? Jimmy G, Brian Hoyer, Aiden O'Connell, Gardner Minshew, Aiden O'Connell, Desmond Ridder, right? I mean, it's been a rotating door. Now what? So you bring in Matt Stafford. Okay, so now you have him there. He's 37 years old. He's had problems with his throwing arm. He's had problems with his back. Who says that he lasts another 2 years? Say he only lasts 1 year. And then all of a sudden, boom, now what do you do, right? He's just beat up. He can't go any further, so he has to retire. Or just can't go and just can't play. You've invested money in him, and now you still don't have your quarterback that you believe in the future. So what do? You go back to another bridge, right? So that's the scenario that you're looking at, and I'm looking at and thinking the Raiders need to figure this out. Who do they think their franchise quarterback is going to be? So that's why, as I mentioned in segment number 1, I thought that, the plan, sticking to the plan, would be build this team through the draft. Right, you have 10 draft picks. You have a lot of money in free agency. You can help build that offensive line. You can put some weapons around. You can do what you have to do with the salary cap space that you have. Maybe that does include a veteran quarterback like Matt Stafford, but you don't have to do that. You could build through the draft. The problem is this would be the draft that only has a couple quarterbacks. Cam Ward at the top, Shedeur Sanders, right there with them, right? They're going to be top 5, 6, 7 picks, whatever you want to say, top 10 at the worst, right? There's no way they get out of the top 10. I think we could all agree on that. After that, you got Jackson Dart, you got Jalen Milroe, you got Will Howard, you've got Dylan Gabriel, you've got Tyler Shook, you've got guys that are making some noise, but I'll promise you, none of those do anything for me. And it's just me. And that's all I could ever judge on is basically what I'm saying. It doesn't do anything for me. Those guys don't wow me. Those guys don't make me think, oh man, the Raiders have their franchise quarterback, or can even develop into that guy. I mean, they could. They could sit behind a Matt Stafford for a couple years, and then you feel like you could pass the sticks on. Maybe. Right. But it just feels like a tough draw to me. I feel like that they need one of those top 2 guys. I've been very adamant that I'm a Shedeur Sanders guy. I think it would make sense for them to get him. I think it would also make sense for the look. The Raiders need a guy that could be be in the spotlight, the franchise face alongside Max Crosby. One guy on defense, one guy on offense. And I think Shedeur could do that. He can handle that. He can help put butts in the seats at Allegiant Stadium that are wearing silver and black jerseys, as opposed to, Steelers or Giants or Eagles or Vikings, whoever comes through the building, right? He can help do that. Again, I've said it many times. If they could do that in Colorado, they could definitely do that in Las Vegas. But how are you going to get one of those quarterbacks? Matt Miller from ESPN, NFL draft analyst, joined my radio show on Wednesday as well. And I asked him that same question. How do the Raiders get Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders? Can one of those drop? What do they have to do? How do the Raiders find a quarterback at 6 when all these teams need quarterbacks ahead of them?
Trade up. I think that's the only way to do it. And I do think the Browns are going to take one at 2. Okay. They have to. They can't pay someone with Deshaun Watson's contract on their books. And Andrew Berry basically said today that Deshaun's contract isn't going anywhere. The injury was not nefarious. He just re-injured the tear. They're going to have to pay him. They're not going to be able to come get that money.
Yeah.
I don't think you can go after – clearly you can't go after Stafford or Darnold. Kirk Cousins, we don't know if he's going to even get released, so he can't be an option. Daniel Jones, come on, you can't do that. So I think the option is you have to trade up. But to trade up, you have to go to 1.
Right.
And that's going to be kind of costly.
Yeah.
And it's also, do the Titans want to potentially move back that far and miss out on Abdul Carter? So it is tough. It reminds me a lot like last year, where we talked about this last year. The Raiders need a quarterback.
Yep.
Okay, well, you got to get in front of all these other teams that also need a quarterback.
Right.
And then weren't able to do that.
So then he's talking about trading up, but he's not talking about trading up to number 2, where I've been talking about with Cleveland, where that could be the sweet spot for him. He's saying you got to go all the way up to number 1. He believes you go all the way up to number 1. There's a good chance that Tennessee, even though they're talking about taking a generational talent, a lot of people believe Abdul Carter or Travis Hunter could be that guy, that you better get up to number 1 if you want to get that quarterback, Cam Ward or Shedeur. So then the Raiders have to make a decision. Are either one of those guys worth what it will cost to do business? That's the other element. That's the hard thing to decipher. What are you going to do? How are you going to do it? So does it make more sense to try to go with a veteran and you feel like you know what you have in Matt Stafford? Maybe draft a Ashton Genty at number 6, even though I think that's still a little rich for him. Is that the 1-2 punch that you want to look at for the next couple of years and feel like, okay, the Raiders can go and try to address their quarterback of the future, maybe in a later draft when it's a little bit deeper when it comes to quarterbacks? Or should they go ahead and try to invest now and go get their guy? That's a decision that they have to make. I know that they're exploring every angle and trying to figure out exactly what to do with their QB spot, because they have to, right? I don't know what the answer is, but you can't leave any stone unturned if you're the Raiders. You can look at Matt Stafford. You could look at Sam Darnold. You could look at Russell Wilson. You have to look at all these guys that could be available. You have to look at all these guys in the draft. You have to obviously pick Chip Kelly's brain, who fits with what you do. You know Will Howard from your time at Ohio State, obviously. He's got a lot of game film from K-State to Ohio State. Maybe he's that guy. Again, doesn't do a whole lot for me, but that's just me, right? There's others that believe that he's a big-time player. A lot of folks have a lot of confidence in Jackson Dart. I'm kind of lukewarm on him. Jalen Milroe, as much as I love Alabama football, this is the one time you are not going to get me to say, roll tide, go get that guy. I don't see him developing into a franchise quarterback in the NFL. I think he's a quarterback in college, sure. I don't see him as a quarterback in the NFL. Matter of fact, at the Combine, he actually was asked to do drills as a running back, and he declined. He said, I'm a quarterback. I respect that. But it kind of just lets you know what a lot of people think about him. Now, that doesn't mean he can't be a quarterback, because they asked Lamar Jackson to switch positions, and he didn't, and it worked out really well for him. He ain't Lamar Jackson, in my opinion. So that's what the Raiders' decisions are. Do they go in the Matt Stafford direction, right? Is there any kind of repercussions for this potential tampering, right? I mean, are they almost in a position where they better make a trade with the Rams, or maybe the Rams will turn them in for tampering, right? I mean, I think that's another element, a little asterisk that you have to add to this story. I think there's something there, right? I definitely do. And maybe that's a slip up by Tom Brady as a, new minority owner, and, just kind of doesn't really know all the rules and what he's supposed to do. Maybe that was a mistake on his part. Maybe it's not as serious as the way Jordan Schultz reported it. But to me, I like to live by the old saying, where there's some smoke, there's some fire. So we'll see what happens. But those are the decisions. Matt Stafford, give up some draft capital. I would definitely not give up a number one. I really wouldn't like them giving up a number two. I'd prefer them to give up a number three, one of those third-round picks that they got from the Jets for Devontae Adams. Maybe you have to give up 2026's third-round pick as well. Fine, so be it. Do what you got to do if that's how you feel like the direction that you want to go, the draft capital you need to give up for them. And then what do you do at 6? Do you get a defensive tackle if Mason Graham's there? Do you get offensive linemen if Banks from Texas is there? Travis Hunter, I'm sure, will be gone. Do you go with Ashton Genty and say, hey, man, he's Daniel Jeremiah's number 3 player in this draft, right? He's number 3 rated player in the draft. Go get him, right? He has 750 carries in college, so he's got a lot of wear and tear on that body. How long is that going to last? Is that a good investment at number 6? Or do you do everything that you can to go and get your quarterback, either Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders, and say, okay, I got the face of the franchise. I got the franchise quarterback. Now let's build around him. Decision. That's what the Silver and Black have to do. John Spytek, Pete Carroll, Chip Kelly, Patrick Graham, and everyone else involved in the decision-making process, including Tom Brady.
When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth-quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. I love using FanDuel's live betting feature because it keeps every moment of the game exciting. Whether I'm backing my team for a late-game rally or picking a player to hit a clutch 3, I never feel like I missed my chance. Plus, the app is easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. Later today, the Nuggets take a trip to Milwaukee, where Denver is favored by 3. The Lakers are 5-point favorites over the Wolves in Los Angeles, and the Magic are 6-point home dogs versus the Warriors. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more. FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA.
You are Locked On Spartans, your daily podcast on the Michigan State Spartans, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
That's right, the Michigan State Spartans, they pick up a win in College Park. Well, 3 and precisely 3 more points than Maryland scored. I don't know the final score, to be quite honest. I blacked completely out, and not off alcohol, of course. It was a water-only night here at the Sheehan household, but what did we just watch, Sam? Sam Martin, by the way, friend of the podcast, great basketball mind. What the hell was that? What did we just watch? Oh, my God.
I almost think about what that was like for a Maryland fan. That was the all-time guillotine game for Maryland. You're behind, you can't win. Oh, we're falling. And then we just claw our way back. And at the last second, as the Viper is taunting his opponent walking around the arena, whoop, Trey Holloman from 55 feet crushes their eyeballs out of their skull.
Right in front of that wall student section, who, by the way, like, fantastic student section, fantastic crowd. Like, I have nothing bad to say about Maryland, their program, their fans. I don't care for their head coach, obviously, but that's because of a very petty child that remembers what he did with Seton Hall and Miles Powell back in 2019 or 18 or 2012. I don't really remember the year, quite frankly. But look, my big, maybe hot take of the game, maybe I'm just a little too drunk off the green Kool-Aid right now, but hey, you know what? After you win on a half-court buzzer beater on the road, you don't get to say this quite often, but here I go, Sam. Are you ready? Are you sitting down for this one? Feel like, as ugly as it was for Michigan State on the offensive side of the ball, feel like Michigan State deserved to win that game. I mean, they had full control in the second half, of course, save for the little mini meltdown at the end. That wasn't a great time. The offense never really got rolling, but in Michigan State fashion, they played great defense the whole game. They only held Maryland to just, 1 or 2 field goals in the last 5 minutes and 15 seconds. I mean, I think MSU, it sounds ridiculous, after a half-court buzzer beater to steal one on the road, I still think that they were the better team here, and this was against a team that a lot said was the best starting 5 in the Big Ten. You did it in their own barn. Do I need to pump the brakes a little bit and realize that, no, we got pretty damn lucky this game?
Izzo agrees with you. He said in the post-game interview, he said, that was a lucky shot, but don't say we didn't deserve to win that game, because MSU did outplay them for pretty much the entire way. And yeah, it was close. They started to pull away with about 5 minutes left. 5 minutes and 24 seconds was when Jace Richardson hit the shot to put him up 9 points. And that's one where you can look at the post-game win probability chart and see you were at about 91%. And they did play very poorly down the stretch, and they played very poorly at different times during the game on offense. I thought Maryland did a good job with some scheme at the end where MSU started to spam the Jace Richardson high pick and roll, and they went to kind of a 3-2 zone look to take them out of that. What I think MSU can learn from this, and I hope Jace Richardson can learn from this, is that he was giving up the ball and then retreating to the corner, which I'm sure is his normal assignment within the flow of their offense. When you give up the ball at the top, make a cut to the corner, get out of the way, let Holloman cook a little bit. But the way that especially MSU's offense, and really after a great game against Michigan, Holloman for a lot of the game until the end of it did not play very well offensively. Some great defense from him, as is true of really the entire team. They just let Maryland take them out of what was really working. And hopefully that's something that they can learn. He can be a little bit more assertive in those situations in the future, come back up. No, give me the ball. I need to be the person who's making plays, because really he, at the very beginning of the game, when MSU took control right out of the gate, and then when they took control again in the second half, it was Richardson who really, I think at this point, without a doubt, is the clear best offensive player on the team. But this was just a blocking and tackling, running the ball, stopping the run, gritty effort by Michigan State. I mean, the offensive rebounds in the game, it was something like 13-4, including some really big ones down the stretch, to take control of the game. And just, you see in that game the way that this construction of Michigan State, playing 2 centers all the time, crashing the boards really hard on both ends, really getting back to an old school brand of basketball, the way that can still work for you in creating so many extra possessions. I mean, the field goal attempts in the game, Maryland took 48 field goal attempts and 26 free throws. Michigan State took 65 field goal attempts and 12 free throws.
Thank you.
That's the game.
Yeah. No, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to be salty and complain about officiating, especially after we won. I like to think that I'm better than that, so I'm just going to bypass that whole topic right there. I do like what you said about rebounding. It has been the cornerstone of this team the entire season, and you were right. It was 10 offensive rebounds to 4 for Maryland. But I'm sorry, 13 offensive rebounds for Michigan State, 4 for Maryland. 10 second chance points for your Michigan State Spartans, whereas Maryland, they didn't get any second chance points at all. Not in the first half, not in the second half, not in the entire game, Sam. So yeah, that's the calling card for Michigan State. Not only is it good defense, it's great rebounding, and you saw it in spades right there for Michigan State, leading the way on the boards. Jackson Kohler, 8 rebounds, and then 5 for Carson Cooper. You also had 8 from Jace Richardson, too. I should have pointed that out. I'm sorry, but here's the question, which is like very difficult to answer. It's like, who gets your MVP for that game? Obviously, JC's your leading scorer, 15 points, 6 of 14 shooting though. So like percentage-wise, not the most efficient, but it's not like anyone else was really that great offensively, except for Trey Holloman when he found his spot from 55 feet away from the hoop, just like he practices it. Who gets your MVP? And if it's obviously Jace, who gets second fiddle for you?
Yeah, I mean, you would have to probably say Jace Richardson simply because the biggest stretch of the game was when MSU took control in that 7 to 5 minute stretch of the second half. And he was the one guy who was able to get to his own shot. I think that, I can't really give it to one player. It was really such a collective effort by MSU's big men of rim protection. And I thought Maryland's bigs did a great job as well. Mm-hmm. There was a lot of slop in that game. And there was some, bad shot selection, I think, on both sides. But there was also a lot of great defense being played and a lot of really great athletic verticality. I mean, that's the first time I've ever seen Cohen Carr get blocked at the rim. Now, he was a little off balance. He didn't have a full spring. He needs to maybe watch a little Jimmy Butler tape on taking a pump fake in the paint once in a while. But it was just such a physical game. And MSU's bigs, I thought Zapala had a lot of great moments in relatively limited run, both protecting the rim. And he fumbled a couple passes, missed some layups. MSU as a group missed a lot of layups, including Jace Richardson. I think missed a couple ones, and he was off balance for some of those. But it was just, who really was the MVP of the game was Tom Izzo. This was just such an expression of what he wants out of his team, the way that he wants them to play. And the reason that they won, maybe the lucky shot turned the game in the end, turned an overtime game into a victory. So that's 50% of a win. But MSU controlled that game because they played so hard and they played together, and they played great defense and with tremendous effort, as we've seen them do for most of the year. And it's Izzo ball. It's what we've been saying since the beginning of the season. They've brought back the feeling. They're doing it in the way that we love. It's the basketball that means something to us. And I'm very glad that they won the game. And even as ugly as it was, there wasn't a time where I didn't enjoy watching this.
Oh, I will disagree with you there. There were times where I was like, I need to take a bath after this. This is the grimiest hoops I've seen since like circa 2003. This is tough, but hey, I'll tell you what. I don't care how ugly it looks. Anytime you're leaving a road venue in the conference with a victory, bathe me in that, actually. I want more of that slot.
23-21 halftime score had me picturing one Dick Bennett and the old-time Wisconsin Badgers. Those first one to 40 wins. I was like, oh, man, we really are back in the glory days.
No, it truly felt like, you went back a little further than me, it truly felt like a Bo Ryan, Tom Izzo matchup. Like that first to 50 win, blood all over the court, quite literally at some points. Julian Reese had to leave the game with a little blood on his jersey, but it was...
I mean, if you think Tony Bennett's Virginia teams committed crimes against your eyes in basketball, his dad was like the original war criminal. So he created the blueprint of how to offend the senses while playing hoops.
Bro, this team is finding ways every single game. The Pistons beat the Boston Celtics. And they didn't just beat the Boston Celtics. They took BTA to the Celtics. You know how to fill it in. Belt to bleep. They dominated the Boston Celtics. They won this game by 20 points. Joel Mazzulla emptied out the bench with around 4 minutes left in this game. We talked about this on yesterday's episode. I came on here and said the Boston Celtics are the NBA champions for a reason. They are a tough matchup for every team in the NBA. Expecting this team to beat the Celtics is unfair to them. If they lose, it doesn't mean the season is fluke or the winning streak's fluke. Like, just be ready. If they do lose, don't freak out. It's not the end of the world. This is the NBA champs. Well, silly me. Like, you know what? What am I looking for? I'm looking for something to hit me with. Like, stupid me. The Pistons won. Who cares about them potentially losing? They won this game. They beat the Boston Celtics, the NBA champions. at Little Caesars Arena. I understand the Philly game was big time without Cade, and it definitely is one of their most big time wins of the season. But this win right here is number one. I don't care what anyone says. This win right here is number one. They beat a team that is 42-17. They beat a team that just won the NBA championship last year. And yes, they didn't have Jaylen Brown in this game, but they had Jason Tatum, Al Horford, Kristaps, Drew Holiday, and Derek White, along with Payne Pritchard. It's not like they were going against the B team. They were missing one dude. They still have 3 other damn near all-stars on their team. The Pistons came out here and showed up and showed out and took down the Boston Celtics to win 8 games in a row. 8 games. Who thought they would be doing this? Every podcast, it feels like. Actually, first, I want to say this. I'm so happy for you guys. I'm so happy for the rest of the Pistons fan base, because obviously how down the Pistons fan base has been, especially coming off last year. But even over the last 15 years, man, it's been tough. It's been tough. And you are watching the most fun, most joyful, the most hope, the most, just the light at the end of the tunnel is damn near blinding. It's right in all of our faces. It's blinding all of us. That's how bright the light at the end of the tunnel is for this team right now. They are 33-26. 33-26. We on the playback stream, one of the people that watches the stream with us and hosts it with me, our guy Matt Griffin, he's been on the podcast before. He let us know. He brought this point up. Not only are we talking about the Pistons just making the playoffs, not only are we talking about the Pistons potentially winning a playoff game, not only are we talking about the Pistons competing to try to win a playoff series, we are now in serious conversations to be had that the Pistons could be hosting home court in the playoffs, could be having home court advantage in the playoffs. They are 32-26. They have the same amount of wins as the 4th-seeded Pacers. They are a game behind the Pacers because the Pacers have played 2 less games. In their last 10 games, they are 8-2. Actually, make that 9-1 now, I believe. 9-1. Actually, no. The standings haven't updated yet. I'm wrong. The NBA standings have not updated yet. They're 33-26. So I believe that would put them right behind the Pacers because they played 1 less game. The Pistons are in a position where they are actually fighting for not just the playoffs, not just to win a playoff game. They are fighting to have home court advantage in the playoffs. Who the hell would have believed you if you said this 7 months ago when you were watching the worst season in Pistons history? Guys, there is no one that could have expected this team to be this good already. To expect this team to be this good already. They just keep finding ways to impress you, game in and game out. They are finding ways to win games in multiple different ways. The Hawks game, you have to win a shootout? Check mark, we can do that. This Clippers game, you have to win a defensive battle, low-scoring game? Check mark, we can do that. You have to win a game where Cade's not having a good shooting night? Check mark. We did that against the Boston Celtics of all teams. This team is the absolute bright spot of the Detroit sports scene right now. They have the city's attention. They have the city's support. They have the fan support. And they deserve it. And not only do they deserve the Detroit fan support, this city's support, which they're getting, it's about damn time they start getting some national love. And I'm not talking about a quick throwaway from Tim Legler. By the way, Legs, do a great job. Love to have you on the podcast one day. But they need more than just Tim Legler being the only one who wants to give them a little throwaway. They need some talk. They've won 8 in a row. The only team with more wins there's only 3 teams in the NBA with more wins than them since January 1st. Start talking about them, ESPN. Start talking about them, Fox Sports. Start talking about them. Because they deserve their respect. I'm not even, you know what, from now on when we talk about this team, I am no longer, I'm not making this mistake no more. We won't do it no more on this podcast. From now on, I am no longer saying anything the Pistons can't do something. Because I did not think they could beat the NBA champions. And they did that. I didn't think they would ever go on an 8-game win streak. They've done that. I didn't think they would beat Philadelphia on national stage without their best player, but they did that. Like, every which way we go, they do something that we think they can't do, that we think they shouldn't be able to do, and they do it. You are watching this young core develop in front of your eyes and lead the way. You are watching this veteran presence that Trajan Langdon brought in. With all these vets, you're watching them be the absolute perfect vets for this team and for this city. Malik Beasley, damn near throw his jersey up in the rafters at this point. I give him a lifetime contract. If he's ever not a Detroit Piston again, I might lose it. And I think half the fan base will start crying. Hang his jersey up in the rafters at this point. That dude is crazy. This team this year is a special year. This is a year that Pistons fans are always going to remember. It doesn't have to end in a championship for this to be a memorable year that people talk about, because this year will be known as the year the Pistons turned things around. This will be known as the year that the Pistons became that respectable legacy franchise again. That they're no longer the laughingstock like they've been the last 15 years. They are now the respectable, really good team that deserves everyone's respect and can beat anyone on any given night, man. The Pistons won again. This was a fantastic game. Fantastic game. Took belt to blank to the Boston Celtics, bro. Absolutely fantastic win. Take down Jason Tatum. Take down Kristaps. Take down Drew. Take down Derek White. Take down Joe Mazzulla. And the Pistons survived 9 straight threes in that second quarter, by the way. They survived the Boston just clash of threes raining in. They survived that, and they still came out on top. This team is legit, bro. Put some respect on their name.
When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. I love using FanDuel's live betting feature because it keeps every moment of the game exciting. Whether I'm backing my team for a late-game rally or picking a player to hit a clutch three, I never feel like I missed my chance. Plus, the app is easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. Later today, the Nuggets take a trip to Milwaukee, where Denver is favored by 3. The Lakers are 5-point favorites over the Wolves in Los Angeles, and the Magic are 6-point home dogs versus the Warriors. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more. FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA.
49ers general manager John Lynch was at the podium at the 2025 NFL Scouting Combine.
You are Locked On 49ers, your daily San Francisco 49ers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, Croc, John Lynch spilling some beans, keeping some beans in the jar as well, not trying to let everybody know everything that's going on with the San Francisco 49ers, and had some interesting quotes, and I think even told us a little bit more between the lines as it pertains to some of the players. To be honest with you, maybe the Debo and Ayuk stuff in particular, the most interesting, because I thought it would have been a much shorter and a much different answer when he was asked about if teams have been calling about Brandon Ayuk. We got to start with the most important position on the football field for any football team. That is quarterback, Brock Purdy. And it probably comes as no shock that negotiations have started between the 49ers and Brock Purdy. And I'm going to go to the transcript here for some of the quotes because I don't want to get it wrong. I think the most interesting phrase, Croc, from John Lynch's answer about how Brock Purdy negotiations are going. He said, "We have started negotiations. We're talking. I won't go into negotiations, like always, is our stance. I want Brock to be our quarterback as long as we're here and beyond, and we'll leave it at that." I think the final thing, there are no guarantees that we get something done, but in my experience has been when both sides are motivated, there's ample opportunity to do so, and we've been able to do that. No guarantee.
Yeah. Like, okay, so here's my thing. I always go back to this because we've heard them, the contracts, and we still no guarantees. I think you and I, we've talked about this from the jump. We fully expect this deal to get done. So he says no guarantees, but we expect that deal is going to be done. I will say his tone on that, similar kind of to the Ayuk situation and a couple other ones, not similar to Nick Bosa. Like when it came to Nick Bosa, it was he ain't going nowhere. Deal's going to get done, like no doubt about it.
Don't
But it's
bother
like
calling
these
about
other
trades.
guys,
Yeah.
and Ayuk, he was almost gone. So he kind of came across no guarantees. We'll see. He's a guy. We want him to be a 49er long term. And eventually they got it done, but they were minutes away from trading him away. So that window for trading him, it was truly there. And they gave him permission to be traded. With Brock Purdy, I don't foresee that happening. But for him to say there's no guarantees on your quarterback, is he saying that there's no guarantees to get it done right now before he plays the fourth year? Or is he just saying in general, like, we want to get it done, but we'll see. Like, what's your read on that?
I think he just knows how these things go. Like, this is telling me this is a summertime thing. This isn't a spring thing. This isn't a March contract that's going to get done. They're not going to get this done before free agency. This is going to be a tough contract. There's going to be an insane amount of money involved here, much more than the 49ers have ever divvied up. And those kind of contracts, you start adding pages and pages and pages and pages, and there's fine print, and there's language, and there's bonus structure. And I think even if you knew exactly what the final number was, I think it's still hard to hammer out all the details of how a contract like this is going to look. And maybe there's you just kind of have to haggle over every bit of the structure here. So if these other contracts were that difficult, this could be twice as difficult, really, and they might be even further apart in some aspects of how much they want to throw out there, how much they want to spend on Brock Purdy, how much he wants, what the agent wants, what they want for structure, years, length, guarantees. There's a lot that goes into this. No guarantees that we get something done is very interesting. I think that we expect something to get done, and he does say that there's ample opportunity to do so, and we've been able to do that, but sometimes that's late August, right? Sometimes that's like you're bearing down on September 1st and a contract isn't done yet. You hope this isn't one of those because it's more difficult with the quarterback to get ready for the season if your quarterback's not practicing than if like one defensive player or maybe one of the wide receivers isn't practicing or even one offensive lineman. If the quarterback is not practicing at training camp, that's a problem. So buckle up. I mean, that's the way I read this from John Lynch is buckle up. And if Purdy's people have a number that the Niners aren't comfortable with, this is going to take a while.
My issue with that is, and maybe I'm wrong, this is something that happened with the Lamar Jackson situation, but for most of the quarterbacks, when your team likes you and they love you, which the 49ers, I believe they like him. Now, I mean, but you kind of have to question to what extent, because most of these other quarterbacks, they don't go through that. Like when Trevor Lawrence was up for a new contract and got his deal, did we hear about anything about it? Like, it was just it got done. When Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, when they're up for contracts, when they need to kind of, restructure something to fit the team, whatever, but it just gets done. So why is it that Brock Purdy, who is your guy, why can't you just why does it have to be so difficult? Like you said, oh man, it's going to be kind of difficult. There's a lot of different, why is it so difficult when it's not difficult for these other teams that want and need to pay their quarterbacks? They just get it done.
Some of them were difficult. Some of them were like there was holdouts or threats of holdouts. The Tua one comes to mind, and the Dak Prescott deal comes to mind. And those
I don't think they wanted to pay Tua, and I don't think they wanted to pay Dak Prescott.
What they got and what they ended up getting was numbers that I think may make me uncomfortable, and I'm not even writing the checks, and I don't even care anything about the Dolphins or the Cowboys, right? And that makes me uncomfortable with how much money they got over there. And those are going to be the comps for Brock Purdy. So it's going to get to an uncomfortable level, and the 49ers don't like that, and they're tough negotiators. So again, this could be a tough one, and it could be a little bit difficult. The one thing with, and correct me if I'm wrong, somebody look it up, and I'm sure we'll hear about it. I'm pretty sure Trevor Lawrence's deal was done with 2 years left on it because he's got the 5th-year option for first round quarterbacks. And so after year 3, just like Brock Purdy right now, after year 3 is when they did that contract. So there was still 2 more years to go. So that one got done a lot earlier. So that's kind of the big difference between and why the structure is different and why they're able to spread out the money a little bit different with the Trevor Lawrence contract versus the Tua contract and versus the, some other contracts where guys are going into the final year of their contracts. And for Brock Purdy, all those guys were already making a lot of money before. Brock Purdy's an entirely different animal because how underpaid he's been, and he had a 7th round contract rather than a 1st round contract, or Dak Prescott was already coming off a veteran contract when he signed his latest deal.
No, well, okay, so Dak Prescott, he was a 4th round pick. What happened with him was he played his 4 years. They couldn't agree on a contract, so then he had to they franchise tagged him.
Yeah,
and then he snapped his ankle on the franchise tag. But he was kind of lighting it up, at least, yardage wise, like all those things. He was kind of lighting it up, and it was like, oh man, all right. And then the price went up. I just saw that with the Cincinnati Bengals and Jamar Chase. They haven't paid him yet. Remember, Jamar Chase held out last year, and eventually he was like, all right, like I'll come back. He came back and caught for 1,700 yards, broke every Cincinnati record. So now the price is exponentially higher, and I think that's what happened with Dak Prescott, where it's like, well, we don't feel comfortable paying him, so let's franchise, or we're going to have a franchise tag him or have him play on that 4th year. He played on the 4th year, went crazy. Then you franchise tag him, he snaps his ankle. Now it's like, well, we kind of owe it to pay him and take care of him. So that was a different situation. But initially, they did not want to pay him. So with Brock Purdy, I just keep coming back to this. If Brock Purdy is to this team what the fan base believes he is and what we believe he is to this team, why is it so difficult to just get this taken care of without all the extra stuff?
I mean, you could ask the same thing about any of the guys that have had tough negotiations and holdouts, because it seemed like it would have been an easier contract to do the Nick Bosa one. And even that took all the way to the end of a training camp to get that done. And by the way, Jamar Chase, that's a good example. Listen to what Duke Tobin, I believe it's Duke Tobin, the GM of the Cincinnati Bengals. Listen to his comments about Jamar Chase and getting a deal done. And it sounds a lot more like how John Lynch sounded about Nick Bosa. And there's a report that basically they're going to sign him. He's going to get a lot of money, and it's going to get done, and it's going to be huge, and they're ready for it. And it's going to be even more than Bosa's contract. It's going to be the biggest non-quarterback contract in the history of the NFL. And that's coming. And then basically the GM was like, yep, that's what's going to happen, and we're going to do that.
When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a 4th quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. I love using FanDuel's live betting feature because it keeps every moment of the game exciting. Whether I'm backing my team for a late-game rally or picking a player to hit a clutch 3, I never feel like I missed my chance. Plus, the app is easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. Later today, the Nuggets take a trip to Milwaukee, where Denver is favored by 3. The Lakers are 5-point favorites over the Wolves in Los Angeles, and the Magic are 6-point home dogs versus the Warriors. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more. FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA.
You are Locked On Jets, your daily New York Jets podcast.
Our next question: do you think Woody Johnson getting an F will actually change anything about his ownership? So this question is about a report card the NFL Players Association released. And essentially, players give their team a grade on various factors, such as the quality of team facilities, lots of pretty much every aspect of a team. And in this report card, Jets players gave Woody Johnson an F. In fact, Woody Johnson was rated as the worst owner in the league as far as this report card goes. And that's not exactly shocking stuff if you follow the Jets, not just the last year, but the last 15 years, but especially the last year, because the owner has been very erratic. And there have been a few reporters have dug into this, and not surprisingly, the completely just erratic nature of the Jets the last year has really impacted that, particularly firing the head coach 5 games into the season at a point where, to be charitable, it really did not make a lot of sense. And it's really funny because this could be a barometer of the fan base. I actually remember very vividly last year this report card came off from the NFL Players Association, and the Jets did not really score well in many of the areas. And Jets fans were very dismissive of it because Jets fans, I think, were more hopeful about the future. And there was a lot of talk about, these players are spoiled. Who cares? Look, the people pointed out the Chiefs sometimes score poorly on these report cards. This year, the fan base is a little less happy, and they seem more inclined to believe the report cards that do not score the Jets particularly well. I remember last year, the number one complaint was that the coaching staff was not using its time efficiently. And if you think back, the complaints of the people complaining about the players suggesting that, I think the players were pretty spot on. Will this change the way Woody operates? Look, I'm past the point of trying to sell hope on this ownership group. It's just a dreadful group of owners, and it starts with Woody Johnson. We can talk about his brother. We're at the point where these guys need to prove it. I'm past the point of trying to tell you that things are going to be okay with these guys, because it's been a disaster. And we are now in a 14-year playoff drought. And in those 14 years, I've said this over and over, we've changed players, we've changed coaches, we've changed general managers, we've changed front offices, we've changed uniforms. You name it, we've changed it. The only thing that's been constant is that the Johnson brothers have owned this team. Jets 14-year playoff drought. Number one, that's the longest drought in the NFL. Number two, the second longest drought is half it. The second longest drought is 7 years. Number three, it's not just the longest playoff drought in the NFL, it's the longest playoff drought in any of the four major North American sports leagues. And, Woody Johnson is just a dreadful owner. I mean, he's meddlesome. And look, the meddlesome nature did not begin the last year or two. It's gotten worse, though. I think it's worse than it's ever been. I mean, this past year was just ludicrous. When you talk about firing the coach, when you talk about forcing the Devontae Adams trade. And by the way, when he fired the coach, he didn't consult with the GM. And look, I may not have been Joe Douglas's biggest fan near the end of his tenure, but you're firing the coach, you certainly should consult with the GM. Woody Johnson, when the Jets traded for Devontae Adams, you can read the transcripts of what he said. He said, he's pretty much said he ordered the trade to be made. And the Jets took on a terrible contract and gave him a third-round pick for essentially three-quarters of a season rental at a point where they were already really out of the playoff race. Just utterly nonsensical stuff. But look, Woody Johnson's been meddlesome in the past. And when he hired John Idzik as his GM, he forced Idzik to keep Rex Ryan. He forced this marriage that really didn't work. Two guys who did not fit well philosophically. You saw what happened. There were lots of rumors he was behind the team trading Darrelle Revis in 2013. He did not let his football people decide. It's one thing if your football people decide trading Revis is the best move. All indications are Woody Johnson was behind that. I mean, you want to talk about the trade for Brett Favre. I mean, Eric Mangini went on the record. He said, Eric Mangini said, I did not want to trade for Brett Favre, but Woody forced me to do it. And Woody told me, you won't be fired if things don't go well with Favre. What happened? Things didn't go well with Favre, and Mangini got fired. I mean, you can just go down the list. Woody Johnson has been an incredibly meddlesome owner, and it's been incredibly damaging for the New York Jets. And there's really we need to see him change. And the only thing I can tell you is sometimes owners are really bad and they get so embarrassed that eventually they just figure it out. They just realize what, I can't do this anymore. I can't act like this anymore. For Woody, we're now 25 years into his tenure and he's still acting like this. And maybe I guess the only hope I have is maybe the last couple seasons where he's been so embarrassingly bad and it's been his fault. Maybe that'll embarrass him into letting these guys run the team. I mean, hopefully he hired the right people, because one of the areas where I hear people defend Woody, they'll say, well, he owns the team. If the team's not going well, he has a right to step in. Well, nobody's questioning that he has the right to step in, but when he steps in, he runs things into the ground. And you know something? The great teams in this league, the owner doesn't step in to destroy the team because you go on a losing streak. The owner doesn't step in and destroy the team because you have one losing season. The idea that the owner can just completely take over the franchise if you have a bad season, that's not sustainable. At some point, you're going to have a rough go of things, and you either have to trust your people or you have to bring in new people, because Woody Johnson's not qualified to make any decisions. And I don't know how many. I'm going to keep saying this because I think it needs to be said, and I don't think it gets said enough in the media in general. Woody Johnson's an abysmal owner, and Woody Johnson deserves no grace. Woody Johnson deserves no benefit of the doubt. Woody Johnson deserves criticism until he proves he doesn't. So you know what? Fine. If Woody goes out there and improves the next couple of years, no one will be happier. But you know what? He deserves every bit of criticism he's receiving right now because he has done an abysmal job. That F grade is 100% accurate.
When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. I love using FanDuel's live betting feature because it keeps every moment of the game exciting. Whether I'm backing my team for a late-game rally or picking a player to hit a clutch three, I never feel like I missed my chance. Plus, the app is easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. Later today, the Nuggets take a trip to Milwaukee, where Denver is favored by 3. The Lakers are 5-point favorites over the Wolves in Los Angeles, and the Magic are 6-point home dogs versus the Warriors. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make everyone more FanDuel the official sports betting partner of the NBA.
You are Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast.
All right, Gavin, let's get into this 110-105 win for the Knicks. So, as mentioned, Jalen Brunson, I think that's where we got to start, right? The Knicks have I think it was up to a 19-point lead at one point, blow it, end up going down to the Sixers. You don't love that. And then Jalen Brunson just fully takes over down the stretch of this game. 12 of the final 14 points for the Knicks. The most memorable one coming when the Knicks were down 2, I believe, at that particular moment. Marches down the floor, waves off everybody, says, "Give me Maxey one-on-one." Goes one-on-one with him and just hits a 3 right in his eye. Barely any hesitation. Didn't even really put like a crazy move on him or anything. Just kind of dribble, and then was like, okay, now it's time. And then shot it, makes it. Of course he does. He's Jalen Brunson. This is what he does. Huge clutch performance for him down the stretch on his way to 34 points and 7 assists, most of those assists of which I should say he racked up in the first quarter when, much like Mikal Bridges did with the points, which we'll talk about later in the game, he was just a maestro early on in this game, getting Mikal and others involved with 5 assists in the first quarter. So just a fantastic all-around game for Jalen Brunson.
He had literally all of his assists in the first quarter. I think he did 7 of them. So yeah,
I only looked up when he had 5 at one point, but yeah, whatever. You take it. It's good.
It was good, but I don't know. We'll talk about it. It was a tale of 3 games, or I would even go so far as to say 4 games. 4 quarters, 4 games. Like first quarter was like just dominant, clinical from the Knicks, exactly what you wanted to see. Second quarter, most of the third, like cruising along. Third, most of the fourth, like George and Maxey after just a abysmal first half. That might be a low point in a season. Full of low points for Philly. They both come to life. And then Jalen Brunson just slams the door late. I love the relationship that's developing between him and Maxey at this point, where Maxey's like just like his incredibly talented little brother, but Jalen still has the upper hand, at least at this point. Maybe let it flip at some point. But he is the clutchest player in the NBA right now. I cannot imagine. I watch a lot of other basketball. Obviously, I don't watch anyone else as much as the Knicks. I cannot imagine anyone has hit just like the sheer amount of shots in the final few minutes. And we have stats for this. I know outside of Nikola Jokic, like no one has come close to both his volume and his efficiency. That is maybe the 4th time all season. Like maybe I'm underselling it, 4th, 5th, 6th, that he's hit like a step back 3 or a step back long 2 to end a game. It feels like, Alex, we've had maybe 5 of them now just in the last, like, I don't know, like 12, 15 games, like over and over again. You give him the ball late, he gets to his spot, he makes the shot. I felt like over his first 2 years, he did have his share of those, but there were a bunch of times where they would go in and out. And he just like he just slammed the door, right? Like 9 points in a row at one point, getting to the free throw line over and over and over again. Had one where he ran a pick and roll with Precious, and they basically just ignored Precious, and he had 3 guys around him and somehow like navigated his way through the thicket to get a lefty layup in. Of course, made his free throws down the stretch. 14 points total in the final 16 minutes. Finished the game 14 of 14 overall from the foul line. I thought it was just a brilliant playmaking start for him, and then closes the game with his scoring, which is everything you could ever want from a Hall of Fame point guard, which Jalen Brunson will be. this is a game the Knicks very could have easily lost. And if they lost, you would have said, hey, they deserved it. They played with their food. But it's happened so many times this season where the Knicks have done that, and they've won anyways because they have Jalen Brunson and the other team doesn't.
Yeah, I'll say I have my stat correction: 15 of 16 from the free throw line.
Oh, there you go.
Not quite
started
perfect.
14 of 4. There you go. But he also started with 5 assists, so we're set.
There we go.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're on top of it today. We're on top of it. But this is why we have co-hosts, right? It's so that the other one can fact check while the other one's talking.
It's a puzzle. Yeah.
At any rate, yeah, I'm with you. I mean, it was just a show of Jalen Brunson in his purest form, right down the stretch. It's just this guy. There's no like doubting him, especially once it hits this point of the season. It seems like we've kind of hit that point where I think someone had one of those like graphics, like the ones that it's usually for like football where it's like, the beginning of the game and it's like a little brackets and it's like, like, oh, this is great. And then like, oh my God, I hate my life for like 85% of it. And then like the final little part is like,
yeah, we
oh my God, I love this team so much.
Yeah.
And there was one that someone put out with Brunson recently where it like showed like the entirety of the NBA schedule, like on a little, graphic somehow. And it was like, the first like part of the season, it was like, oh, Brunson's pretty good. And then there's like a middle part where it's like, did Brunson forget how to play basketball? And then at a certain point around like February, you just go, this is the greatest basketball player to ever live. Like from like February all the way through the end of the season. This is just, it's the Jalen Brunson experience. Like he starts off strong, pretty strong, and then he'll have a little slump in the middle of the season, and then he just catches absolute fire down the stretch and wins you a lot of games. And this is probably why, I mean, I referenced it the other week when we were trying to predict like the record the rest of the way out, making bold predictions and whatever. But like probably a big part of the reason why the Knicks have very consistently won like 64% of their games after the All-Star break every single year is, no matter what their record was prior to it, is that, you have this guy on your team that can just make these clutch shots when you need them. And, I think that this game was just another show of it. I mean, that it just goes to show like the kind of run that he's on right now too. Sometimes, and, maybe even earlier this season, I would have seen this happening, the Knicks blowing this lead and whatever, and been like, oh man, like, this is going to be a really tough loss when this doesn't work out. Like it's just, they're letting it go. They're letting go of the rope too early, and now they're going to get burned for it, whatever. And yet down the stretch of this one, I was just kind of like, yeah, let's see how this plays out. Like, I bet Brunson will do it. It's like you're kind of hitting that point where you don't want to get too reliant on the fact that this guy can just score on anybody anytime he wants to. And yet it's hard not to feel that little security blanket of like, well, at least my team has Jalen Brunson and the other team.
Oh, yeah.
Like if it's close down the stretch, like that was basically how I felt at the end of this one. Of course, doesn't help that like the Sixers are playing horrendous and had lost like 6 straight games coming into this one. But clearly, Paul George is a little more motivated now. He announced earlier today that he's taking a step back from podcasting to focus on his basketball career.
Can I ask you something? Did you think that was Centel when you first read it? Because I 100% thought that was Centel. I was like, this is really good because it's within the realm of something that could happen. But obviously this is fake. And then I looked and I saw Centel got banned today. R.I.P. Centel. And I was like, oh no, this is real. He said this once they're 20 games under 500. Joel Embiid is like his knee is in a coma. And like the season's over. He's like, you know what? I'm gonna stop doing the podcast now.
Yeah, my fanfic on this is that Centel saw that and then said, "There's no way I could ever up this." Like, like life has overtaken art at this point.
Yeah.
But yeah, I had this thing
bowed out of the game from there.
Yeah, exactly. It's really funny because I had that exact same like interaction with a coworker. I said to my one coworker like, "Hey, yo, check this out, like, check this stuff out." Sorry. Paul George just said that he's going to stop focusing on podcasting and instead focus on, playing basketball instead. And they were like, that's Centel, right? And I was like, I don't think I just got Centel. It was from a reliable, like source that, sends like updates on one app. And then I looked it up. I'm like, no, there's literally a video clip. Like, this is for real. Somehow
there was a stat out there that he like made field goals in hours podcasted. It's like 230 to 150. Like it's way too close. It's way too close.
He had like demonstrably more podcast clips put out than field goals made this year at one point, and it's It's crazy. Anyway, that was a fun little aside. But at any rate, thank goodness the Knicks have Jalen Brunson and not Paul George, I guess is the moral of the story.